right. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm talking to you, right?
Yeah, you're just talking to me.
Okay.
Listo. All right, let's start off. Let's start off with some low-hanging fruit, true or false questions.
Okay. Yeah, that is true. That's a true statement. And this is so low-hanging fruit for Blurb, but yes, it was the Blurb group portrait that I took with your camera, actually. Yeah, okay, I'm glad everyone liked it.
In the Blurb circle.
I'm not known for my portrait work. That is true.
That's terrifying.
It's not terrifying. It is a little terrifying, but it's not terrifying. Yes, that is 100% true. And you asked me, you should ask me because otherwise I need a, okay, so it is scary, but I do it with a group of people. I'm on a team of people who I've been with a long time. We have trust. One of the things we always say to each other before we start, I've got your back. So regardless of like if you're in a situation where it's difficult, challenging, you're getting lost, there will be someone who will help you, and it's great. It's the polar opposite of being a photographer. However, I was mentioning earlier, another photographer friend last week asked me like, how could I be into improv? And it seems counter to like my artwork and my photography, and where he thinks that I'm more focused or buttoned down or methodical. And the improv actually has liberated a lot of my photo work because I go out and I'm open to possibilities. I can react to things in a much more fluid way. One of the things we always say in improv is you always yes and something. So instead of denying, if you're in a situation, you take what's given to you, you embrace it, and then you add to it. And so I've found all through my art practice, since I've really taken improv seriously, is that I'm taking many more risks. I try a lot more things. I experiment a lot more. It's really liberated my process, and also like brought me into things like that I've just have taken many steps in many different directions visually that I don't think I would have if it hadn't been for improv. Okay, well, yes. Okay, so I'm Nick Tauro Jr. I call myself a photo adjacent artist because I'm not just a strictly straight photographer. I incorporate photography into my visual art. I also self-publish. Hence our conversation. I use Blurb and MagCloud platforms. I usually do, my primary outlet for my work is self-published zines and books. And I do a photo podcast. I'm immersed in the world of photographic visual expression. Well, the photo thing for me started in high school. I was a freshman in high school. I was in a study hall. The photo teacher came in and said, we have 2 slots available in our photo 1 class, usually not open to freshmen. But my older sister had gone through the program and the teacher made an exception. So I was the only freshman ever allowed in the darkroom in my high school in Dumont, New Jersey. I had 4 years of photo in high school. Continued on pursuing it in college, went for a fine art degree, although I think it was just sort of path of least resistance. I wasn't ambitious with it at all, but photography and just visual things were always really important to me. And all through college, and then once I got out of school, as many times as I tried to drift away from photography, I always ended up going back. And it's never been financially motivated or professionally motivated. It's always been personal expression and passion. And for that, I think is maybe why I've been with it as long as I have, because in some ways I don't have a lot of pressure on it to be a career, but it's still in many ways my primary means of expression. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I have a professional life outside of photography, and a lot of it is visual communication, video and photography. And so I see the restrictions or parameters that puts on, creative people, visual photographers, video makers, things like that. So
like what I'm doing right now.
Like what you're doing right now, but at the same time, it made me, it's good that I can pursue my art without the pressure of anyone else's expectations at all, except for my own. Oh, that was to come. Although my teacher was really, as one would expect, a high school photo teacher in the suburbs of New Jersey. She was probably the most open-minded, liberal, creative thinking person in that entire school. And she did a lot to introduce me to the world of visual art, filmmaking, and photographers. So my first exposure to, let's say, Diane Arbus was through that photo teacher. Or cinema, like experimental cinema. She would take us on field trips on the weekend into New York City, and we'd all jump the bus and ride it into Port Authority. And then she'd take us down to like some alternative art space to see like a cool show or the latest Koyaanisqatsi movie or something. Really expanded my horizons on what just being an artist or being a creative person was like. But it really wasn't until college when I really started I started seeing the people who really influenced me visually, for like Robert Frank or Joel Peter Witkin or Dido Moriyama, like those people. It wasn't until I started to learn more of the history of the art form that those sort of touchstone artists showed up for me. I think most of it was, and I don't like to call it street photography, but that's, urban exploring. At the time I was still spending a lot of time in New York City. I was working in New York, had a camera in my pocket, shooting film at that time. So I think I was just exploring that environment. Interestingly, not so much, it was more the environment itself and not people. Maybe people were part of it, but it wasn't, I was never drawn to portraiture or, if people were in the shots, it was just sort of byproduct of it. Yeah. Yes, I did, but, and a lot of it was strictly darkroom work. In the program that I was in, the fine arts program, we were focused on portfolio and having an exhibition. So a lot of our, output was driven towards that. And then for a long time, I think it was always the photo print, whether it's an enlargement or, that was pretty much the outlet for whatever work I was producing. This clearly was before the internet and having that outlet of having a website, or even long before social media. But then also the idea, which is interesting, that I do rely so much on zines and books for my sort of workflow and my outlet now. That didn't come into play back then for me. It wasn't, and I was aware of great photo books, but I was also that's, Lee Friedlander does that, or Robert Frank does that. That's not maybe someday I'll have someone will put out a book of mine. So it wasn't even a consideration, really. Well, for one thing, it forces me to be selective of what work just having a body of work and having it be focused or cohesive enough to even consider to put it into book form, but then also looking at flows between images or sequencing. I really put a lot of consideration into spreads. I actually had a conversation with one photographer a few weeks ago, and he said, I will never have two photos facing each other in a photo book. And I was like, that to me, that's your own consideration, but to me that the challenge of working with a spread, or the challenge of working with a sequence of images and knowing that someone's going to have to flip the page, I love all of that. I think also it appeals to my sort of graphic design background as well, just to kind of work in a page layout format. But yeah, really like making the decisions of, you know, what photographs go in and don't go in, or how, like, where do you start? What's the first sort of thing that you put out? Like, what's the first page? You know, what is that going to lead to? How does the work ebb and flow? Those are all considerations, and I love that part of it. I will conservatively, I'll say 24. It depends, but I don't do the test book for like, I don't do the test book for like color accuracy, or it's more like, is this iteration of the project, is it the final iteration? I'll do one where I like am feeling out and knowing that it's not going to be the final. There's one particular project where I think I did 4 or 5 different layout approaches or format of, like, you know, a vertical or a landscape or spiral bound before I settled on like the final piece. Generally, like, the test books are more about that, kind of like feeling out like actually physically what it, you know, like what it feels like. How's it running? How's the sort of the sequence running? Rarely, unless, like, sometimes I'm like, well, fuck it, it's a 1-on-1 and I'm just, and I'm sorry if I curse, you're gonna have to bleep
No, it
that.
doesn't matter.
Okay. Sometimes I'll just be like, literally, there's one coming today that I was like, I had this folder of images on my computer that I just had compiled. I said, I'm just going to jam out, you know, a magazine of these, and I'm ordering one, and that's probably all it's ever going to be. And it's going to go, like, you know, sit on my desk. But I was working out, again, like spreads. It was all about making every spread work. And so it's not with the intention of this will be the next one for sale, or I'm going to run 25 copies of it and put it on my website. It's just, that was that practice for that weekend. And when it comes in, I'll look at it, and it's not going to do a revision of it. It's probably, that's the only time it's ever going to be printed.
It's like a sketch.
Yeah, it's or just kind of like a physical, like, get it off of the computer, you know, either get it off the wall, you know, like literally just have it and hold it. And then maybe that process will inform my next, you know, more bigger project, or, you know, something that I do plan on doing like a short run of. Well, it's a good fit for me. First of all, I have control over the whole process. I have creative control over what's in and what's not in. I have worked out a balance between the amount that it costs per copy and what I can price to actually sell at a reasonable price that, you know, isn't going to be a barrier to some people who are, you know, like, are they going to drop $50, $60 on a photo book? Maybe, maybe not. Are they going to drop $20, $25 on a soft cover, you know, perfect bound 48-page book of mine? Yeah, maybe most likely they will. Or at least I have like a mailing list where, like, I let people know, here's my latest thing. And there's people on that mailing list, they'll buy what I put out, and I know that I'm able to gauge the demand, and then I'm not going to have a box of printed books that I'm going to probably just move from storage space to storage space. So for me, it's a great sort of place to work in, where my process is I can generate it, get my ideas out, formalize it, share it, and I'll always have extra copies that I'll, you know, use as sort of, you know, calling cards, or if I'm like wandering around and people, you know, like, hey, this is what I'm doing here. This is what I do. Here's this, like, that I'm, you know, like, that I'm not just a random person wandering around. And yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I would love the opportunity, like, you know, if someone came to me and said, we would love to put together a book of your work, and it's hardbound and it's slipcased and it's, you know, 5,000, 10,000 copies, and, you know, I would consider that, but also I know that I just know that the weight that brings, for me, it's not a model that I want to be working in. And also, like, talk about scalability. Like, let's say, there's a demand for, I can rerun another edition of books on my own to, satisfy a growing demand. And again, like, it's not like I don't have to have a stock, just, money up front. That's the other thing. I mean, really, like, I don't see, like, investing thousands and thousands of dollars to get to that, to get to that place with that kind of book. I know people do it. For me, it's not. Maybe it also flies counter to my sort of DIY. It's just like I don't roll that way. I'd rather, like, like I said, I have control over what's in the book. I can reach out to who I want to see it. My audience is growing, so, that's all good. The model works for me. I actually use Blurb first, and I actually have a book which is not here in my studio. It's up in my closet at my house. And I think it was 2007 or 2008, and I did a hardcover book, Blurb. I actually used the layout interface on the website, which I'm sure, like, is like the earlier iteration of what you guys are doing now. Even then, I mean, like, the idea of, like, okay, I put together a body of work, and I had this idea I was going to shop around this body of work to galleries, and that was going to be my leave behind. And I was actually like going to go into a gallery, introduce myself, and leave the book. And so I got 10 hard copies of this book together. It actually had, like, the cover, like the printed cover on it. I have one copy of it left sitting at home.
Did you get a show?
I didn't get a show. I didn't get a show. However, but, like, it was easier just, I mean, at least I got, somebody to, like, I had a conversation and left it with somebody, and, wasn't like, again, it wasn't, hey, here, check out my website or go to my Instagram feed or whatever. It was actually, like, the physical object. So Blurb first. I'd say I'm probably 2/3 MagCloud, 1/3 Blurb. Cost, audience, sometimes I think it's just like the body of work might require, like, the hardcover sort of stability. I think it's a intangible thing, but it's I like MagCloud. I just right now, it's like I've even got my, like, template on, like, my InDesign document where it's easy for me to go in. It's like so seamless, the workflow, and then the export settings for the PDF where it's just like pop and then it goes up to the website and it's like, it's sized perfectly. All of those considerations, it's so easy for me. And a lot of times, like, my audience, I just think, like, again, like, the cost and the quality for what I'm paying is just a really nice balance. Well, hell, man, yeah. I mean, there's a ton of people. It's funny because I know we started this conversation talking about crossing paths in Paris, and I was there for Perry Photo, as you were, but then I went over to Polycopies, which I also ran into you there as well. And that whole world of sort of like not top tier photo publishing, but like people that are really just like doing like the independent work. To me, that whole scene was inspiring because it felt accessible. It felt like, oh, these are people like-minded that are also doing it not to pound out 10,000 copies of a coffee table book, like getting the books into people's hands. That I found really inspiring. But as far as like photo books in general, there's just like my most recent obsession was Jim Goldberg, and I got his Coming and Going book, and you could spend hours in that thing.
Legend.
It's amazing. Yeah,
that guy's a legend.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so I'm constantly looking at work. I've answered this question before and I'm still waiting. I would love a newsprint option, or like, even if it's not like a traditional newspaper, but like, I think just a variety of stocks. But yeah, like, I mean, if you know anybody at Blurb or MagCloud, that you could maybe say like printing on newsprint would be amazing. And that's for me, that's a personal thing. I like to experiment with a lot of, like, even when I'm doing my like non sort of photographic printing, if I'm doing collage work or alternative process, like the paper, just paper choice in general is really important to me. But there's something about newsprint. There's something about the, it's very egalitarian. It's very, to me, it's like anybody, you know, like it really harkens back to sort of like that, even like the punk zine thing where you were like running Xerox. Like a lower end, unpolished kind of look. That's probably, I don't know how many people are writing to you asking for that, but I would love a newsprint option. Well, you know,
trim sizes.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's interesting actually, because the trim sizes is an interesting thing to bring up. I have printed out, I've sent things to MagCloud with the intention when I get them to cut them down by hand, because like it just like I could find close to the size that I wanted, but didn't. And I would actually design the pages where there'd be just kind of trim lines on them and just kind of center them so they still come bound, they still come printed, but then I trim them down myself. Although like then you're relying on your own janky straight edge exact skills, which you know, I take a little liberties there, but that, yeah, trim sizes or format sizes I think are definitely something. I'm actually a really big fan of the spiral bound. Mm-hmm. I love that. For like a year, I think I was like full on, like anything I got done with spiral bound, and the big format one, and I think I sent you one of those. The oversight, it was like 1114 or even 1117. I mean, just to have that much space, but then the spiral bound and have it lay down on the you know, like on the desktop and just be like working with that much visual real estate is really awesome. I have, it felt like for my audience, like sending them elsewhere to complete the purchase either felt like there's a disconnect between it being a personal, like they're not necessarily getting it directly from me. Also, I generally sign my books. Yeah. So that's, you know, I get them, I sign them to, you know, as they go out the door. That's a little bit of an issue. I have actually put a couple of things up where I was just made it available. It was something that I had originally released as sort of like a limited signed numbered edition, and then there was it sold out, and I said, well, you can get it via the MagCloud site, but that's an open edition, it's unsigned, and I'm a little resistant to just kind of being separated from, you know, closing the loop on the purchase, I guess. What's next for me? Well, let's see. I just wrapped up a couple of big projects. So what's up for me is maybe just to not go full on like busy for a little bit. I do have some. I've got some ideas brewing for. I've been doing like either cyanotype printing, like older alternative process. And I've been incorporating like handwork, so I'm maybe feeling out where that work's going to go, but not anything sort of solid right now. Well, these are two. Maybe this is the next thing that's going to happen, actually. So these are both a series, I guess, that just started for me, and this was the first of the series, which was shot during that trip to Paris. And I brought a small handheld digital camera with me, and I brought a prism with me because I've been looking for ways of, getting away from straight photography, but also bringing, like we talked about earlier, an improvisational approach to shooting. So I like to do a lot with like either using a lens baby or a tilt shift, or I have one lens which I don't have here, which I literally, like, it was an old Canon lens that I just smashed with a hammer. And so it creates this like haze, and it's just this, it's bringing some unpredictability to the process of shooting. And so this thing was the result of me going to Paris, and I brought a prism that I hold up to the lens, like an old science class experiment prism. And so I would shoot through the prism, and I would get all of these crazy like refractions. I did a lot of night shooting in Paris. These really sort of, it creates multiple like layers of imagery, right? But also one of the it's interesting about shooting with the prism is that you really lose perspective of even like what direction you're facing, or people who are coming up behind you, you can see them through the lens, or it creates this sort of like chaotic world that you throw yourself into. And I really found like that, especially in Paris, where I don't speak French, and it's at night, there's all of this activity going on. It was just this really nice sort of entry into exploring the city, and maybe creating images that don't look like everybody's, standard photos of Paris, a place that's been photographed to death, right? And then number two was I did the same thing on multiple trips to New York. My family still lives in New Jersey, and I was there for a couple of visits. And this one's called 167, and the trivia answer here is, do you know why it's called 167? There's the bus that runs from my hometown into New York, and it's the 167. And so I rode that bus several times into New York, and it was basically the same thing, where it was a prism approach, and just creating this other layer of visual, chaos in an already chaotic environment. But it was also, what I liked about it, again, was I could just be in a crowd and I would see things happening around me that weren't just right in front of the camera. It was a really sort of exciting way to be in the city, and to bring yet another, layer of like New York, another place where it's been photographed to death. So what am I going to find interesting there? That actually helped me. So this was number two. I have been doing this here in Albuquerque. I don't know if, the Paris, New York, and then Albuquerque.
Of course.
But maybe it will be. So yeah, and I'm excited about like this. This is a nice, again, like it's a very quick, closed-looped process for me to put these out. MagCloud, yeah. Okay, so this is a Blurb project. I collaborated with a local musician here in New Mexico. He was recording an album, and he lived in a cabin, and he brought the whole band over, and they lived there for 2 weeks together, rehearsing and recording, and they wanted me to document it. So I went and I photographed all during their recording process, but then we decided that he wanted to put out a book with my photos and his lyrics from the album. And so, like this, for example, is a typical spread. So all of his song lyrics, and then my photo, and we, it basically did a visual interpretation of his album from my body of existing work. I didn't shoot those photos specifically as a response to the music, but it was a really wonderful collaboration and gave me a lot of creative freedom to sort of make this book into, it could just act as a photo book. Mm-hmm. It can also act as a visual companion to his CD, which we also put in the back of the book. So, and he sold these at his gigs, which was at his merch table. And then I, had my stash that I also did. But yeah, this is a primo Blurb job. And what's really nice about this is that it's like, it feels like a record album, you know, like the format. It's like, I actually have one of these slipped in my vinyl collection at home that just, it you know, fits seamlessly as like a record album. So, and this is really like the beauty, like the end papers and the binding, and the print quality is really fantastic on this. And we're very proud of this one too. And it was a really nice, the collaboration between a musician and myself was just a lot of fun, really satisfying. Merch, well, you know, like you go to a show, you probably buy a CD or a T-shirt, but like you're gonna go home with a photo book. That's pretty, you know, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, I want my own merch table. Yeah, just get whatever you need. Yeah,
Of Albuquerque.
Yeah, the Prism acts as a little defense device too.